Oh my god, hey.
Hello, it's that time of year again.
It is indeed. It is time for the Olivier Awards 2025.
You know I love to talk about this all through the year.
Yeah.
But this is always that nerve-wracking video when we have to kind of go...
We have to commit to what we think is going to happen.
And then everybody says whether we were right or wrong.
What we're going to be doing in today's video or podcast, if you're listening to us on podcast platforms, is discussing the potential nominees for the 2025 Laurence Olivier Awards, celebrating outstanding achievement in the last year of West End theatre in London. It's the British equivalent of the Tony Awards.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about the Oliviers because the announcement of the nominations is due in the coming weeks. The ceremony itself is taking place on the 6th of April this year. It's going to be hosted by Beverly Knight and Billy Porter.
Very fun.
Very exciting. And we're going to be talking about the potential nominations for such shows in the last year as Hello Dolly, Starlight Express, the Oliver Revival, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Why Am I So Single? In the world of plays, we're talking about KYOTO, Giant, The Years. If you're wondering why there are some productions which aren't discussed by us today, it is most likely because they are not actually eligible. So talk to us about how eligibility works, Aeron James. I'll let you answer this one because it's a minefield.
So, they have to be a SALT theatre.
Society of London Theatre membership.
Theatres like the Donmar and the Almeida are eligible in the main categories because they pay to be entered in the main categories, similarly like the Peacock and the Hampstead Theatre.
Yeah.
So some theatres like that are eligible, whereas places like the Menier, where obviously the Producers Revival has been recently, that theatre is in the affiliate category and is not eligible for the main category.
And some of them may surprise you because we know obviously the big commercial West End stuff is eligible, but like you were mentioning, the likes of the Donmar, the Almeida, the other Palace, Riverside Studios even. So anything that has played a substantial run at those venues is eligible if it had its official press opening night
before the 14th or on the 14th of February.
Yeah, 14th of February 2025 was the cutoff, and the commencement date was sometime late February last year. But as you can imagine, there aren't a lot of shows opening around the commencement. This year being a bit of a weird example for that because we've had at least 2 high-profile productions open since the season ended.
And this is why people get confused as well, because both of those productions did start performances before that date. It seems to be that Much Ado and Richard II for the next year's eligibility.
But listen, the Olivier Awards managed to find a way to surprise us every single year. Shows we don't anticipate being eligible suddenly are. There are things we anticipate about this year's eligibility that we could find out are incorrect. There are people that we are assuming might be leading performers who turn out to be supporting performers. Every year they surprise us one way or another.
There's also some years where multiple performers are nominated as one singular unit,
which I think we might see again, but we are getting ahead of ourselves. So let's talk through the nominations we think we will see in the coming weeks for performers, productions, and creatives. We're not going to talk through every category because we haven't seen a lot of opera, dance, or honestly much affiliate theatre this year or family productions. So we're going to skip over those. But everything else, even though we haven't seen everything, we are going to make some educated guesses. Right before we do start, I want to flash forward to the future and talk about some of the numbers that we think we might see based on these nominations. Here are the shows we think might be the most and least successful in the coming weeks. We have the revival of Oliver as well as the revival of Starlight Express, both leading with 8 nominations. Right behind that, another revival, Hello Dolly, with 7. KYOTO, the play, also with 7. Still doing well. MJ the Musical with 5, same as Giant. And then we have a bunch of shows, Spirited Away, The Years, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button with 4. We're also predicting recognition for Oedipus and for Fiddler on the Roof, Mean Girls, Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812, The Devil Wears Prada, with 2 or 3 nominations each, but a whole host of shows not getting remembered, not getting nominated. So now let's talk about how we got to those numbers and predict this year's Olivier Award nominations. Which category would you like to start with, Aeron James?
Let's start with the biggie. Let's start with Best New Musical.
Best New Music. It's the biggie as far as we're concerned. Well, we really saw a divide this year between new British musicals and a lot of commercial heavyweights.
Yeah.
Which productions would you say are a lock for Best New Musical?
The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
I think is a lock.
And Great Comet.
Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812 at the Donmar Warehouse. Yes, not the same as the original Broadway production, but still its UK premiere and will still be considered a new musical, just like Next to Normal was.
One is on currently, one is only recently closed.
Yes.
Both got very good, strong reviews from the critical side.
There are a handful of other new British musicals, or even not British musicals, but sort of new shows. I'm thinking about Kathy and Stella Solve a Murder. I'm thinking about Babies at the Other Palace. I'm thinking about Fangirls at the Lyric Hammersmith.
So I don't know if Babies is eligible or not.
Babies is a question mark. We think they might not have been eligible. The conspicuous one in the category as well, possibly by omission, is Two Strangers Carry a Cake Across New York, which from what we know
was eligible last year and didn't manage to get a nomination.
Correct.
Which makes me really sad because then following that, it has been loved so much.
Yeah, we don't believe that the run at the Criterion is going to be eligible because the run at the Kiln was eligible, but it wasn't nominated there because it didn't really have the same kind of profile. I think it would be non-reflective of the year that we've had if it wasn't included.
Yeah.
I think it's been a big part of the year.
I feel similarly we'll probably see Why Am I So Single there, as a show that recently closed but had a well enough critical response.
So you think Why Am I So Single does get a nomination for Best New Musical?
I think so.
I do as well. We have seen 4 nominees for Best New Musical many years in a row, with the exception of 2022 when we actually saw 5 nominees for Best New Musical, again in 2018. For that 4th slot then, we're looking at shows that were not necessarily reviewed as well, but have been very commercially successful. We're talking about MJ at the Prince Edward. We're talking about The Devil Wears Prada at the Dominion. We're talking about Mean Girls at the Savoy. If we have left only 1 slot between those shows, who do you think it will go to?
MJ.
You think MJ gets the 4th slot?
I think so. Mean Girls got the What's on Stage award.
I think Mean Girls gets the 4th slot. Let's call it 5 nominees because I don't think we're going to come to an agreement here.
No.
Because I really do think Mean Girls is going to be on there. Let's move on then and talk about the Best New Play. It feels like a lot of these have opened really recently or have sort of announced transfers recently.
Well, what's interesting is that they are all transfers. Of these big new plays that feel like they're runners, this is the 2nd run of a season of that show.
Yeah.
And like for a show like The Years, both productions are eligible as
That's
one
very
combined.
true.
So the Almeida run and the West End run will be credited if it gets nominations.
Yes. As opposed to something like KYOTO at Soho Place, where its initial venue, the Royal Shakespeare Company at Stratford-upon-Avon, was outside of London, so that wasn't eligible, but the transfer now is.
Exactly.
The Years and KYOTO are both 2 of the plays we're expecting to see nominated for Best New Play. Another is Giant, which will be nominated for its run at the Royal Court because it hasn't started its West End transfer yet, even though it is going to be transferring to the West End.
And I could also see Shifters appear in this list.
Oh, I'd like to see Shifters appear there, yeah.
We have Slave Play.
Oh, how had I forgotten about Slave
and
Play?
The Hot One King.
And The Hot One King at the National Theatre.
But I don't think The Hot One King it didn't seem to have the buzz around it, whereas Slave
well
Play
received,
did. Yeah.
But it didn't make much of an industry-wide impact. Neither of us saw it, which is particularly unhelpful. But we did see Slave Play.
Yeah.
And that, of course, prior to Stereophonic, just slightly overtaking its title, was the most Tony Award-nominated play of all time over on Broadway. So are we writing it off a little hastily here? I think KYOTO, The Years, and Giant are all really obvious locks. Do you think Slave Play gets it over Shifters? Oh, we didn't say Oedipus in New Play, and I don't think Oedipus is considered a play revival. It's an entirely new adaptation. I have taken away Shifters and Slave Play, and I've replaced them with Oedipus, because I don't know which one I would have taken off for Oedipus.
Okay.
But I also think ultimately it's probably only going to be 4. And I think Oedipus, I think that has to be considered new. This is how we're going to get surprised on Olivier's nomination day, because there's so many things that we think make sense.
Yeah.
Let's talk now about the musical revivals. It's been a big year for musical revivals.
I feel like this one is quite easy to discuss and narrow down, but they rarely nominate many musicals. I mean, musical revivals has gone down to 3 quite often.
I think this year we will see 4.
I can see 4.
Because there are 3 that are so strong, critically and commercially. One of those was Hello Dolly at the London Palladium. Another of those is Oliver still running at the Gielgud Theatre, not eligible for its run at Chichester Festival Theatre, only at the Gielgud in the West End. And another is Starlight Express at the Troubadour Theatre in Wembley Park, which, if you weren't sure, is Olivier Award eligible.
On the other side, we have Fiddler on the Roof, which is at Regent's Park, and has announced that it's going to the Barbican and then is going on a tour. And then we also have Kiss Me Kate, which was at the Barbican over the summer.
I really don't think we can expect to see 5 Best Musical Revival plays.
And what's interesting here, the transfer of Fiddler on the Roof is going to be with Trafalgar.
Yeah.
And Kiss Me Kate was produced by Trafalgar.
Yeah, and only one of those is going on to have a future life. So if I'm Trafalgar and I'm producing those shows, or if I have produced those shows, I care more about a good Olivier nominations quote on the poster of the one that's still going to go out on tour. So we think then Oliver, Hello Dolly, Starlight Express, and Fiddler on the Roof.
I think so. They all feel like... I feel like if that was announced, I'd say yes.
What are we anticipating then in play revivals?
I don't know how anything's kind of landed with this, because you have the 2 Oedipus, you have Electra, and like you're going down to it. Is this because it's Sophocles? Dancing at Lunacy was this season, was it not?
It was.
And that did do well from what I remember, but it was a very, very, very early on in the season.
I'm not necessarily venturing Rebecca Frecknell's production of
Cat and a Hot
Tin Roof at the Almeida.
The Importance of Being Earnest will likely be there.
You think The Importance of Being Earnest?
I think so.
I mean, thus far, we only have 2 National Theatre plays. I'm trying to think about what else has been produced at the Lyric Hammersmith. I know they were reviving some plays. God of Carnage was at the Lyric Hammersmith this year.
Oh, at the Old Vic, I don't know its eligibility, but the show that everybody was going to. This is the same thing with the Death of England trilogy and People, Places and Things, where I don't know if they were too close to their original productions.
If they call People, Places and Things a revival, I will lose my mind. But then they did for Jerusalem. They called Jerusalem a play revival for the same production at the same theatre with 2 of the same principal cast members. It was a return. It was what I would call a remounting, but not a revival. But they did.
If that was eligible at all.
And Constellations was also called similarly. By Olivier's logic, I'm tempted to put People, Places and Things on here because we've seen nominations and a win for Constellations and for Jerusalem.
If People, Places and Things is eligible, it will be there.
And the other one that you just reminded me of on the route to that was The Real Thing, I assume is the one that you were talking about at the Old Vic.
No.
What were you talking about?
Mackinac.
Oh, yes. I think we're going to be wildly inaccurate in this category. I think this is the one I feel I have the most tenuous grasp on. And I'm just willing to wait and find out that it's something from the Lyric Hammersmith that we didn't even think about. Let's carry on then to what we think might fall into the world of Best Entertainment or Comedy Play. The criteria for which, I should say, is we've decided we want to be called an entertainment or comedy play.
I like to sadly call this we don't think we're going to win musical or play, but we know we will win if we're there, because I will forever say A Monster Calls deserved to win an Olivier, and I was very happy they went into entertainment or comedy play, but it was a play.
I sort of feel similarly about Morgan Lloyd Malcolm's Amelia, which deserved the Olivier win. Is it a comedy? No. Does it have comedic moments? Yes, like many plays.
I kind of sometimes wish it was I know it originated as a comedy for the comedies because it was hard for them to go against a drama.
But guess what? It still is when Stranger Things decides they want to go into that category because they have
the spectacle in the entertainment world.
Yeah, then it's still hard to be a legitimate comedy.
And I like originally the idea of the entertainment that award being for genre shows that don't conform.
What do you think we're going to see in Best Entertainment or Comedy Play?
I think it's a given that Palladium Panto will be there because they don't miss. Yeah.
Robin Hood at the London Palladium. I think, as we have been discussing, Titanic will probably have entered themselves into that category.
Because the elements are a bit different from a musical. Even though they are a musical and say they're a musical, I think it feels a safer place for them.
Yeah.
Spirited Away will probably go into this category because if Totoro could go there and won... Oh, Inside Number 9.
You think Inside Number 9?
Because of, again, it's technically a play, but also because of its odes to the series.
When did it open?
It opened in time. It's been open a little while.
Did it just about?
Like a month ago.
I thought it was only fairly recent.
Inside Number 9's been there like just after Christmas, I think. I'm near certain.
The extent to which I have just not been paying attention to Inside Number 9.
I'm near certain that Inside Number 9 will at least get a nomination, and this feels like the safest category with like Stranger Things, etc.
Let's dive in then to the world of performances with leading actresses in a musical, because I think this is one of the easier categories to predict.
I will be stunned and actually ecstatic.
Thrilled.
If we see it go to 5, but because it's 4, I find this a really tricky category in all of the musical categories.
I mean, I dare say there's been a year in the past that it has been 5. 2016 was the last time we saw 5 nominees. Because we're so much more ambiguous here, I don't know whether that happened because of a voting tie. That's what can shift the category size at the Tony Awards. Similarly in 2010, although what a year in 2010, my goodness, with Melanie C, Patina Miller, Hannah Waddingham, Charlotte Wakefield and Samantha Spiro. For Melanie C even to have been eligible as a replacement in Blood Brothers is a little bit of finagling, by which I mean a massive rewriting of the rules. But interestingly enough, Samantha Spiro won for playing Dolly Levi in Hello Dolly that year. Who do we think is the biggest lock in leading actress in a musical?
Oh, Imelda Staunton.
Imelda Staunton as Dolly. She's probably going to win. It's too early to have that conversation, but she is most certainly...
She will be nominated.
A lock, for a nomination for Hello Dolly. And while we're here, I'm just going to say this now. I think sometimes a show is such a darling and has people that neatly enough fall into those categories that it's just going to get a quartet of nominations instantly. I think we're going to see 4 acting nominations for Hello Dolly in all 4 of the acting categories. I'll remind you of those as we get to them. Who else do we think we're going to see in Best Leading Actress in a Musical?
I will say it's interesting that I always thought that Stephanie J. Block was a lock.
I think she's still going to get a nomination.
I think so. I think if we're not going to see it in Revival, I feel like Stephanie J. Block will get a nomination.
I think she's the surest nomination that Kiss Me Kate has.
Yes, I agree.
I think Claire Foster...
Yes.
For Benjamin Button gets a nomination as well. But we're down to that 4th slot very quickly.
So part of me could see this going to a new upcoming talent in their eyes. So you could see Jamisa Dawnford-May getting it for Great Comet.
You could, but I don't think that's going to be the one. I think Georgina Castle gets it for Mean Girls.
It's been a big moment for Georgina, and she is spectacular.
But it wouldn't surprise me if they wanted to give it to Vanessa Williams to court that exciting celebrity appearance.
Especially if Vanessa is in leading, which to all extents it seems like she is in leading.
I don't think she should be. I think she should be supporting, but I think she will be...
in leading.
But I do... Not that Vanessa Williams isn't great in The Devil Wears Prada, it's just nowhere near the amount of material to contend with the other performances we're talking about here.
It's tricky, I think, because there's a lot of new talent, but it seems really difficult for new talent, or like just, not even just new, but younger performers to break into getting these nominations. So I would
love to not feel quite so jaded about it, and I'd love to be able to have a conversation about Georgie in Prada and about Lisa in Why Am I So Single, and a lot of performance in a lot of other shows, but I think it's the heavyweights that we do tend to see acknowledged at the Oliviers.
Because this is my thing. I would love to see, and I've said it the whole year, I would love to see Bronte and to see Rebecca Hines in there, because they both give amazing performances. But my concern is that because it's such an evenly weighted musical, that they will have accidentally cancelled each other out. Yeah. My other outsider here is, could we see Lauren Drew go in for being Celine? And what makes me really sad is that how these categories are, we haven't been able to say Joe Foster's name.
It's an indictment still on the gendered categories at the
Yeah,
FBAs.
Exactly. Because if this was different, I would have already said Joe Foster's name, because I was like, if there is one performer nomination that would come from that show, it would be Joe.
Correct. Going back to expectations, though, then, we know it's going to be Imelda. I think Claire is...
I feel like Claire is a lock.
We think Stephanie. I think Georgina Castle is the 4th.
Okay.
Moving on to leading actors in a musical. Last year, a hugely busy year for leading actors in a musical. This year, not quite as much, but it's picked up a decent amount of pace towards the end of the season. Who are you going to say is a lock here?
I feel like John Dalglish is a lock.
I think so. They're both terrific in the show, but him being the titular character...
That role has been built for that. Like, even when it was off West End, it was a case of when that show goes to the West End, that role is prestige.
I think Simon Lipkin appears in this category for Oliver.
I think that Adam Danheiser might get one. I think if there was somebody from Villa that would get one, it would be him. And Tevye is one of those iconic roles that you never see miss.
I agree, but I think John is a lock. I think Simon will go in there. I do think Andy Nyman gets a nomination for Hello Dolly.
Because you think it's going to be a quartet.
I just think they all will. But I also... Jeevan Brach has been winning awards
everything
all season.
I mean, how can you deny a quadruple threat?
I think we're going to see more Starlight Express performer representation than some people might be expecting in these nominations. So I do think Jeevan makes it on the list.
I agree with Jeevan.
You think Adam Danheiser more so than...
I think Adam Danheiser more than... Because I just always think if you nail Tevye, and the fact that the show is returning... means that people will be thinking more about that show again.
I'm sure there was another one on my mind. Declan Bennett not breaking in for Natasha Pierre in that case. Adrian Dunbar not breaking in for Kiss Me Kate.
Oh.
Who else did we miss?
We didn't mention Miles Frost.
We didn't. I knew there was a fourth.
There was a Tony Award winner that we didn't mention.
Oh, I knew there was a fourth one.
Miles Frost will definitely get a nomination.
Okay, yep. So that, I think, pushes out Adam Danheiser.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree.
Okay, well, there was no point us arguing over that fourth slot. If we were both going to remember, I knew there was another one we were forgetting.
Yeah, Miles Frost is a lock.
Let's sidestep. We'll come back to musicals, but let's sidestep to the world of plays and talk about leading actors and actresses in dramatic roles. Let's start with leading actors in a play. This, I think, is the acting category of 2025. There are such heavyweights here, and in this category I've heard so many people say, oh, that performance has to win the Olivier, that one has to win the Olivier, about a bunch of different people.
Oh yeah.
I think John Lithgow for sure gets a nomination for playing Roald Dahl in Giant. I think Adrian Brody is the other one who was getting talked about a lot at exactly the same time for The Fear of 13 at the Donmar Warehouse, which neither of us saw, but that was the conversation that was being had.
There's the lead role in KYOTO.
There is Stephen Kunken.
Yeah.
Potentially 2 more slots because...
They are normally 5. It's not that often it ever goes down to 4.
Yeah, they love to nominate 4 performers in a musical and 5 performers in a play for no reason whatsoever.
But it's a thing.
Arbitrary decision. So what other plays...
You've been talking about Oedipus a lot.
Oh, Mark Strong, for sure. 100%. Yeah, Mark Strong gets a nomination as well. And thus far, I mean, again, didn't see Adrian Brody, but of the 3 that I've seen, I could root for any of those to win. They are such strong performances. Slave Play is an interesting one because I think they did manage to discern leading and supporting performances on Broadway, but it feels quite vague. Everything it feels very much like an ensemble cast.
Similarly to The Years.
Yeah, well, we'll get to it, but yes.
Potentially Nye.
Oh, Michael Sheen. And that was more so shaped around... him, and
it's returns as well. When a show's returning, I'm always intrigued to think about it.
Yeah,
there will be, honestly, with plays, there will be a play that we have both completely forgotten about.
Oh, I'm sure.
Hit us right afterwards, and we'll be like, "Oh,
I'm sure." There was the Nationals, Coriolanus, and I mean a handful of other.
I mean, we've not mentioned Hampstead once either.
No, well, we've not been there this year. Let's talk about leading actresses in a play. Now, you've talked about The Years a lot, which features a cast of 5 female performers.
So my thought here is either they found a way to separate them, or I think all 5 will be eligible but in featured.
Because this is what's maddening, because you're basing that off of 6, right?
Yes. I feel like it's tricky to say. I kind of get where that logic came for it went into featured, because they each have segments. And kind of similarly in The Years, they're all present the whole way through, but each one has a specific segment of a play where they are mainly featured.
Yeah.
And I could kind of go, oh yeah, that's their section where they're featured, and then they have technically like an ensemble track where they're not a lead anymore.
Yes. The thing that makes me annoyed is then talking about the Lehman trilogy, where all 3 were jointly nominated in leading. If you were to compare anything to The Years, it would probably be the Lehman trilogy. Now, the Lehman trilogy is longer.
I guess what was the 6 actresses from Allies of Perpetual Succor? Were they featured as well?
I think they were probably featured, but I don't know. It all feels a little bit...
Well, then it's again... female shows compared to male shows potentially.
That's what it feels like, honestly. Yeah, they would have been supporting as well. Oh, it's making me a little bit cross. I think if they were to be individuals, it would be individuals in featured. And I think if they were to be nominated as a group, it will be as a group in featured.
Yeah. Which would be interesting for Romler.
Yeah.
To be against herself.
Listen, we'll get to it.
Yeah.
I think Leslie Manville from Oedipus, my favourite play that I keep forgetting about this evening.
And I just want some clarification.
Sure.
When Jerusalem was renominated,
yeah,
performances weren't.
Mark Rylance was not nominated.
Cool. So I feel like we can just say right now, Denise Gough will not be eligible again.
And unless something mad happens. Correct.
Yeah. Potentially Francesca Amuda Rivers.
Yeah.
Brie Larson, it's been interesting. Where it's been it's not been completely negative reviews, actually.
And listen, Lily Allen got a nomination for 222 A Ghost Story.
Yeah, and then comparatively, Sigourney Weaver. I don't think we'll see that because The Tempest really was not.
And Sigourney bore more of that criticism than I think Brie Larson has for Elektra.
But the more I'm seeing reviews from Mackinell, the more I think it could be appearing quite a bit.
Let's add Rosie Sheehy for Mackinell then. Let's add Heather Agibong for Shifters. But then I think Sharon's going to be in leading.
It's tricky because
let's put Sharon D. Clarke into leading because they've just if they decided Sharon D. Clarke could be considered leading for
Death of a Salesman
for playing Willy Loman's wife, then I think Lady Bracknell is arguably also a featured role, but has more dramatic thrust. So let's put Sharon into leading. Let's cut our losses.
Yeah.
I think with leading actress in a play, and let's move away back to something we know a little bit more about because we've seen more of the shows, which is supporting actor and actress in a musical. I'm going to keep saying I think we're going to see a lot of Hello Dolly love.
Yeah.
So if we go to supporting actress first, I think Jenna Russell.
This is an interesting one because I wonder if we'd see Great Comet love in here, but there are so many different performers that could appear in this category.
If there was going to be one from Great Comet, really one nomination from the entire show, I think it could be
Mimuna.
So that's Mimuna Menon for her performance as Sonia in Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812.
I would love to see Amy DiBartolomeo recognised for her work.
Listen, I'll riot in the streets if she isn't. Amy DiBartolomeo for The Devil Wears Prada.
Because that is a revelation of a performance.
Just like that, we're down to the final slot. Benjamin Button, the entire company, is brilliant. I don't think there are big enough emerging...
I kind of feel like if this cast were nominated, they would appear in the musical contribution for their performing skills.
Which I think we will. But again, we will get to it.
There's beautiful performances in Mean Girls.
I was going to say, do we think...
I'm like a Grace Moa.
Grace and Mean Girls.
Ellen Gazi.
Yeah, or Liv Androusier for Fiddler on the Roof. There's a couple of brilliant performances in Kathy and Stella Solve a Murder.
Isn't out there? Could it be Al Knott for...
I was thinking
a greaseball moment.
I was thinking about this.
If there's a moment in a show that's been going crazy at the minute, there's Greaseball.
Okay, so I think Al Knott or Grace Moat.
There is this moment in me which is saying, could we see Georgina Onwora
for Kiss Me Kate?
Yeah.
I think the category's a little too busy. We haven't talked about Shanae.
Oh yeah.
In Oliver, that messes everything up.
I think that might be the fourth then.
Shanae absolutely gets...
Shanae will definitely get a nomination.
So who doesn't? Jenna Russell, Maimuna, Amy DiBartolomeo or Grace? Okay, I am reluctantly taking Grace off of the list and saying Shanae Holmes for Oliver. I mean, we could see more Oliver love even than that. Going to supporting actor, I think Harry Heppel. And I think, again, we'll see more trains than we realise. I think Jaden Vine might break in here.
For Hydra.
For Hydra in Starlight Express. But I also think, I'm going to completely hijack this one, I think Jamie Moscato could get his first Olivier nomination.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like if there's anybody, when we were talking about if there was anybody from that production, I feel like Jamie Moscato is the lock for that show. I feel like this has felt like a moment in his career where you can celebrate everything he's done until now, but also just this transformation that he has in showing of a role that he's never done before. And my other one, going back to the world of Mean Girls, is Tom Zander.
Yes.
I would love to see in supporting actor a surprise nomination for Oscar Conor-Murray.
I'd be delighted.
That would be wonderful for Mr. Bumble.
But already we've made that category very...
Yeah, it's already very difficult.
Back to supporting actresses in a play then, beginning with the entire company from The Years.
Yes.
I think they get a joint nomination. I think that's what happens here. I think Romola Garai, who is included among that company, also gets a nomination for her performance in Giant, which I believe to be supporting and not leading, but don't quote me on that.
She's been nominated in supporting before. At the What's on Stage Award, she was supporting.
That just means that they agree. It doesn't necessarily mean... We've seen discord before.
Oh, yeah.
Between the nominating bodies. We've seen differences of opinion on either side of the Atlantic. Sharon D. Clarke won for leading in the UK and didn't even get nominated for what was decided to be featured on Broadway.
So I think Jenna Organ... It's likely for Kyoto.
I agree.
I think that ending of a play just seals the deal. The fact that she has to have the heart of that whole show on her. I mean, there are fabulous moments from multiple cast members who could be featured for this show. But her especially, I can see being nominated for how she lands that ending so perfectly.
If Ellie Mae Sheridan is considered featured, I think.
And then I could see her being there.
I think she gets a nomination here. Are we still expecting 5?
I think so.
Who is our 5th slot for a support? You've got Susan Wokoma in The Real Thing.
But she was wonderful.
You've got, and that role has won awards before, Freema Agyeman for Romeo and Juliet.
Yes. Who was the revelation for me in that production. My favourite.
I've put it down.
But I do want to just drop something in here.
Okay.
We have multiple Tony Award nominees
for Slave Play. Yes.
And they all were incredible. It's difficult because of not really knowing how strongly that play landed in memory.
And it was in the summer.
I sometimes this is the issue with shows, is that you end up making these decisions based on, are they still remembered at this point in the year?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of room for us to be surprised.
Yeah, I agree.
With some of these choices. Supporting actor in a play then. I'm thinking about Elliot Levy, also in Giant. I'm thinking about... Actually, I don't know who else I'm thinking about.
I want to say Jorge Bosch from KYOTO, who plays Raoul.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I think that...
Sure.
I think that role should definitely be considered for supporting.
I would love to say Patrick Vale gets one for Elektra, but Patrick Vale didn't get one for Oklahoma, which I thought was a more obvious nom, if anything. Do you think Fizio gets... I think if anyone in the supporting cast...
Fizio would... Fizio's been incredible on stage for so many shows.
Yeah.
But I would be very happy, and I thought the emotional range that he showed in Slave Play was tremendous.
If there's one category that always surprises me with performances I just was not aware of, it is supporting actor in a play.
Yeah.
Every single time I'll be like, oh, fine. I had no idea.
It's like, could we see somebody from like the Hot Wing King at the National?
Could we see... I'm trying to think about the performances in Count Hot Tin Roof at the Almeida. I'm trying to think through everything that we've seen. And again, I think we may just have to cut our losses here.
Yeah. And
accept a certain amount of ignorance when it comes to supporting men in plays this year. Which leaves us with... 6 or 7 different creative categories. Let's start with the always sticky Best Musical Contribution, which has adapted and evolved, and over the last few years has come to be about specifically people working on the music side of productions who aren't the composers or lyricists.
Yeah, so it has arrangers, orchestrations, bands,
musical supervisor, musical director. It hasn't recognised the players, the band, since Come From Away.
Interesting.
But there hasn't really been another show quite like that.
I think the closest was probably Amelie, if the one was going to be nominated, I feel.
But Benjamin Button feels even more so.
Benjamin Button feels like it would make sense for them to acknowledge as well a cast that can't really go into supporting because they all...
Yeah. And that would be nice because Darren Clarke would also still be acknowledged.
Yeah, I could see orchestrations for Starlight Express. I feel like it's a given because they do love to acknowledge orchestrations in this category, and I think that show specifically did a wonderful job.
I do wonder if we will see a nod to Why Am I So Single here, but then with it being up against the revivals and there being so much weight in Revival.
I mean,
it's tricky.
It's interesting. Will they acknowledge Hello Dolly here, because we had songs being brought into the show that hadn't been.
Yeah. There's also Oliver as a question mark. I think Dolly gets one. I think the Dolly music team get one.
Have there been any plays with specific?
I don't know about how much music there is in Ballet Shoes.
True.
And we haven't talked about Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812. We haven't talked about MJ. I think MJ could get one.
Yeah. It's annoying here because you don't have a composition award.
Correct.
But you're kind of thinking, well, what orchestrations will this be a nod to the music, just music as a whole entity?
Let me look at what the new musical versus revival split was. It was half and half last year, with Sunset and Guys and Dolls against Just for One Day and Operation Mincemeat.
Also, London Tide could appear in this.
It could.
As a play representation.
It could. As we go further back, I'm seeing fewer and fewer revivals, so I don't think this will necessarily be revival dominated. I think Hello Dolly and Starlight are the two more likely.
Yes.
Benjamin Button for new musicals. And it wouldn't surprise me to see a play in there. To what extent was there music in Spirited Away? There was.
Yeah, there was. It's similarly to in Totoro.
Yeah, I think maybe we see
Spirited Away.
I'm gonna say
or
that.
Oh, I'm gonna throw it
at me.
Could we see Titanic appear here?
I don't think so. I think it's lower in the queue because I think MJ is also higher. Let's jump now to choreography, where I think MJ definitely will be.
Yes.
Christopher Wheeldon, right, for MJ's choreography. Which other I would love to see Why Am I So Single, Ellen Kane's choreography.
I could see Ellen Kane appear here.
Nominated.
I think Hello Dolly will appear here.
Dolly will, and I think...
Oh, I'm split here, because I could see Oliver come in for Matthew Bourne.
I was going to say Oliver.
But then also, will we see Starlight Express appear for choreography on wheels? Will this be a way for them to nominate the skate team at...
But I think if that happens, it pushes out Why Am I So Single?
Oh, that is very tricky.
Isn't it
just? I always feel like with Starlight Express that skating element kind of leans, the first thing you think of before direction would be choreography.
The big three revivals and MJ in choreography is what I have now. Let's talk about director while we're here. I think the plays are playing this year.
I feel like the plays are going to, because these categories aren't split between plays and musicals, I feel like plays are going to dominate here.
Yes. And so I think Robert Icke gets one for Oedipus. Oh, I think Nicholas Heitner gets one for Giant.
Oh, it's Stephen Daldry and Justin Martin.
Stephen Daldry and Justin Martin, thank you, for KYOTO. Aline Arbo has to get one for The Years.
I would be annoyed if... I
would be annoyed. And we had an all-male directing category last year that I would really rather we didn't again.
Yes. If any musical was going to get in, it would be Dolly, I feel like.
I disagree. I think it would be Oliver.
See, I hope it would be Oliver for Matthew Bourne.
I think it would be Oliver, and that already brings us to 5.
Oliver would be my preference to be in there out of it too.
I think that's the one that breaks in to a category otherwise full of play directors.
Yeah.
Which is a shame for the likes of Benjamin Button.
Yeah.
But we need 2 categories. Let's power through these last few creative categories then. For set design, Spirited Away, for sure, will be nominated for its set design.
Starlight Express will be nominated.
Express, absolutely. I think Oliver as well. And then, are there any of the plays that get into this on a little bit of play favoritism? There, I said it. You can't stop me. KYOTO probably has the strongest set design.
I do love the ending of the Years with the mobile.
Yes, so do I. Is The Years something we might see in lighting design?
I could see that.
There was a production I talked about with regards to lighting very recently, but Starlight Express also.
Starlight Express. I feel like Starlight Express will appear in all of these categories.
In sound, in costume.
As do I also feel like Oliver will, especially as Paulie Constable recently announced.
Oliver was the one I was talking about for lighting. It's hard to weigh Spirited Away against a lot of other things because it was so rich in its creativity and its requirements, honestly, as well. Pitted against something like KYOTO or Giant, it's doing a very different job.
I would bring up though MJ.
You think MJ for lighting?
Yes, because I feel like the set for MJ is slightly simplistic in terms of like how it's framed with it being the rehearsal room, but the lighting design is what elevates that show.
I think MJ also perhaps gets a sound design nomination.
I'm trying to think of any that did anything interesting with sound, because there's plays that do unique sound designs.
Yeah, like Macbeth last year with the headsets. Sunset Boulevard, Adam Fisher won last year. Gareth Fry was nominated for Macbeth. Stranger Things in Dear England.
Oh, maybe Inside Number 9 could appear here.
You think Inside Number 9? I mean, there is consistently a strong play presence in sound design.
I mean, The Years also featured quite a lot of sound design throughout because they do their musical performances.
Yeah.
Throughout also.
Let's put in Inside Number 9. KYOTO?
Potentially in the Spirited Away as well. Spirited Away is this one that I don't know how much it will appear.
I think Spirited Away doesn't appear in lighting or sound, is what I currently have down. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. As we've gone on, I have been less and less confident.
Plays I don't feel confident in.
I started this thinking this was a great idea for us to predict the nominations, and now I think it's been a terrible one.
Because also Elektra had a really interesting sound design also.
Yeah. I don't know if Starlight Express gets a costume.
Interesting. I think that Oliver will.
I think Oliver will, and I think Hello Dolly will as well.
Yes. No, I'm going to disagree with you, actually. I do think
Starlight will. We can put it in there. I'm going on record and saying I don't know.
The only thing I think it might lose to would be Prada.
You think Devil Wears Prada gets a costume design?
I think if there was a category in creative that it would appear in, it would be costume design.
We haven't said Spirited Away.
Oh.
It's hard. I think Starlight doesn't. I think Spirited Away does. I think those are the costume nominees. And even then, I'm probably forgetting something egregious.
Well, I would love to actually, just as we're talking about these creative categories, I would love for Fangirls to appear somewhere because of their video design.
You and me both. Well, we have technically filled out nominations in all the categories that we planned to.
How confident do you feel? Confident at all.
Not even a little bit.
I do not feel confident in this one. And it's interesting because we saw more plays this season than we have done before.
So looking at our final predictions then, we have the revival of Oliver as well as the revival of Starlight Express, both leading with 8 nominations. Right behind that, another revival, Hello Dolly, with 7. KYOTO, the play, also with 7. Still doing well. MJ the Musical with 5, same as Giant. And then we have a bunch of shows, Spirited Away, The Years, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button with 4. We're also predicting recognition for Oedipus and for Fiddler on the Roof, Mean Girls, Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812, The Devil Wears Prada, with 2 or 3 nominations each, but a whole host of shows not getting remembered, not getting nominated. Interesting.
I feel like we're right. We're thinking that Starlight Express and Oliver are probably going to be the ones leading the pack.
I'm readying myself to be surprised because there's things I've stuck my neck out about that even now I'm just doubting more and more since I said them.
I always feel like with the Oliviers, you just don't know the makeup of that nominating board.
And I'm ready for there to be at least one huge surprise, like someone we expected to be in a completely different category, or a show we didn't imagine. Two Strangers suddenly pops up.
This is the thing. If it suddenly was eligible, it could appear everywhere.
Yeah.
That's the show that, like, I would love it to be eligible.
Yeah.
Or you could see something where Titanic went for musical and they didn't go for entertainment.
Yeah.
Because then I would think it would appear.
Yeah. For now, though, those have been our predictions for the nominations for the 2025 Olivier Awards. Make sure to check back in with us as the awards are being, as the nominations, I should say, are being announced. We will be reacting right here live on YouTube, and we can only assume there is going to be significant surprise. At this point, we have shared our thoughts on who's going to be nominated. We would love to hear all of yours as well. So in the comment section down below, you don't have to do it for every single category, but those you feel particularly strongly about, or point out any omissions that you think that we made, let us know what your thoughts are, the nominations that you think we will be seeing very, very soon for the Olivier Awards. We believe we're expecting those nominations in early March.
They should be on the 4th of March, I believe.
On the 4th of March. So make sure we will know the date before then, and I will put up a live stream in advance so you can make sure that you are joining us live for the nomination announcement. And then thereafter, we'll be talking about who we think is going to win of those, and then leading up with coverage towards the ceremony of itself, which we're excited to be attending again this year. Got our tickets, can't wait. In the meantime, we have to find out who's nominated first. So We'll be eagerly awaiting, and I hope that you are as well. Thank you for joining us for our very stressful predictions.
They're never easy.
Nope, they are never easy. We will both see you soon, and we hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day. For 10 more seconds, I'm MickeyJoTheatre. Oh my god, hey. Thanks for watching. Have a stagey day. Subscribe!